Hello and welcome to Cooking the Books with Heather. Today, we're wearing the wrong shirt because we're not cooking out of the Pool Steiner cookbook. We are going to be making a very simple recipe because really I need it right now. We made a few complicated, long, multi-step recipes and now I just want simple. So we are going to be making Scarlett's chicken and rice out of the Deep Run Roots cookbook. Now Scarlett is Vivian Howard's mother. And this is a very standard Southern kind of thing to make. She says that they often call this a bog, chicken bog, and even my sister's husband's family were Southern. I'm not Southern, in case you couldn't tell. I grew up in the South, but was not from Southern people. But I was introduced to a chicken bog with my sister's husband's family when I was about a teenager. And this is basically chicken and rice, and that's it. No onion, no carrot, no celery, nothing besides chicken and rice, salt and pepper, and water. Takes a little bit of time, but we're gonna go ahead and get started. I have my chicken, whole chicken, in a 6 to 8 quart pot. This is an 8-quart pot. Our chicken is pretty huge. I think it was over 7 pounds. But she does call for a large chicken, so this is a large chicken. No gizzards, no livers, but the neck is in here as well as the chicken itself. Breast up, and we're going to cover it with water. She says about 3 quarts, so I'm gonna have to fill this back up a couple times, but just barely cover the chicken with cool water. So I'm gonna do that. That's 3 quarts. It's not quite covered, but I don't have a whole lot more room in my pan, so I'm gonna go with 3 quarts. It's almost covered. It'll be fine. So now we're gonna add salt and pepper. And we're gonna put the lid on. We're gonna bring it to a simmer, and we're gonna simmer it until it is basically falling off the bone, until it is easy to shred. She says that check it at about an hour with the young chicken, which is normally what you buy at a regular grocery store. Though they're not old, not generally old laying hens. She mentions those could take up to 5 hours, but she says probably about an hour and a half for most chickens. So, but check it at an hour. And when it is starting to fall off the bone, then you turn it off, let it sit in the liquid for 30 minutes before you take it off of the, pull it all off the bone and continue. So we'll be back. When this is done, I'm gonna bring this up to a boil, reduce it to a simmer, and let it go until I think it's done. All right, so we'll see you when we get to the pulling the chicken step. Thanks. My chicken cooked for about an hour and 15 minutes before I decided it was done enough. At an hour, it was almost done, but not quite. But now it's certainly done. It's fallen apart, which is what the instructions say. Let it sit in the broth for 30 minutes. And then I took it out and it was still really hot and I didn't want to touch it with my hands. So I let it sit here for about 15 minutes because yeah, it gets real hot. So I have my chicken. As you can see, it came out in pieces when I pulled it out. I have a bowl to put in my, my chicken pieces, which we're going to pull to a medium size. So, you know, small or medium mouthful kind of size, nothing too tiny, but not larger than you want to put in your mouth. And then I have a plastic bag with some paper towels, and the skin and the bones and any other bits that we don't want to eat are going to go in here to be thrown away. And it helps to put it in this kind of bag, in my opinion, or some sort of bag that you can tie up, because otherwise it gets a little stinky in the trash by the next day. So I'm just gonna start pulling. You can see the bones come out really easily. which means it's done. And I want to say right now, I did make a small mistake, one that you guys probably wouldn't notice because I don't give you measurements, but I put not quite enough salt in the broth to begin with, but I tasted it afterwards because like that didn't seem like enough salt. And yeah, I got my teaspoons and tablespoons mixed up. So I fixed that in the broth, and because this is a very brothy thing, the chicken and the broth will be fine, even though it didn't cook in the right amount of salt the whole time. It'll be fine. Easy fix. Okay. So I'm done. My hands are super wet. I put the chicken in this bowl so that I could keep the juice that I knew, the broth that I knew would still be, you know, in it, on it, around it, would come out. So I'm just gonna put this back into the pot, and I'll meet you back at the stove. So I'm bringing my pot of broth back up to a simmer. I got it up a little bit high just so we can get going with this, and I'm gonna add the chicken to the pot. Now, she said, she didn't say to skim it, she didn't say to defat it, she didn't say any of that. So it is just pretty much exactly the broth that I pulled the chicken out of. I did kind of use one of my little strainer spoons to try to get any big pieces of chicken skin or anything that was left in it out. But other than that, it'll be fine. So we're gonna bring this up to a simmer. I'm going to get rid of this bowl and wash my hands again and be right back. I brought my broth and the chicken up to a boil. I tried to get it decent, but it's supposed to be simmering when you add the rice. She does say if you usually rinse your rice, don't do that now. The starch, the extra starch in the rice will help sort of thicken the broth, give it a different texture. So got my rice here. And we're gonna keep this at a simmer, she says, for about 12 minutes, or until, so you don't want the rice to be mushy, you want it to be cooked through, but not mushy. So it might be a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on your brand of rice or whatever you use. I'm using a medium grain, or long grain white rice, which is sort of like the standard rice, in America. Most people use, you know, just long grain white rice. Not super sticky. Yeah. So we're gonna let this go for about 12 minutes. Does not say to put a lid on it. So we're just gonna let it go like this for 12 minutes, and we're gonna check the rice. Okay, so this has been 12 minutes. I have strong doubts as to whether the rice is done, but I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna get a piece out, probably, hopefully not more than a couple, and see if it's done. Still hard in the middle. So we're gonna go for another 5 minutes and check it again. All right, so another 5 minutes. It is so almost there. I'm gonna give it about 3 more and test it. I don't want it to be overdone. We're at almost exactly 20 minutes, and I think it's done, which I think is about the time I usually cook my rice of this sort. So, there is one other ingredient that I have not mentioned in this dish. So we're going to turn it off at this point because the rice is done, everything's done. And we add just a little bit of lemon juice. That is the only ingredient besides chicken, rice, and seasonings. So I'm gonna stir that in. Actually, no, I'm gonna add, there's also, you add some of the pepper in the beginning and you finish it off with basically as much pepper as you want. Up to you. All right, I'm gonna call that good. We're gonna stir it up and then it's done. All right, I'm gonna give it a little taste just to make sure that it's okay on salt level. The lemon juice actually helps add a little bit of salt to not salt, but the acidity sort of helps sort of wake up the flavor a little bit, kind of like salt does. All right, I think we're good. And it turned out a little soupier than I thought it would given the picture, but I followed the measurements exactly. I don't know, it's just how it turned out. I'm not mad at it. I will certainly eat it, sort of like a chicken and rice soup, but I think we'll be going with bowls instead of plates. And I am gonna serve this. She says she serves it with like a green salad. Her mom, this was basically the whole meal. I'm gonna serve it with some squash and onions, not from a recipe, just what I had on hand to cook. So some vegetables on the side, and we're done. We're about to have dinner. And I'll let you know what the kids think of it. I assume they're going to love it. Chicken and rice, both are favorite things of theirs. So we'll let you know. On this episode of Cooking the Books with Heather, you watched me make Scarlett's chicken and rice out of Vivian Howard's Deep Run Roots cookbook. This was a super simple recipe, takes a little bit of time, but very few ingredients, very easy to find all of them, and the result is delicious. It did get a little less soupy, so I made a remark that it was a little bit soupy when we were first finished with it, but as the rice, as everything cooled down, the rice absorbed more of the liquid and it looks much more like what's in the book. So I followed everything to a T, very good. Yeah, it makes a ton of chicken and rice. I don't know if it was because my chicken was huge but it is 2 cups of rice uncooked. So it makes a lot of rice, a lot of leftovers for us, but that's okay because I'm sure it will go in the freezer and come out and reheat beautifully. Not a great summer recipe. It's very warming and comforting, but maybe if it's raining, if it's a little cooler of a day, it's great. Perfect winter recipe too. Very comforting, like I said. Kids loved it, as usual. Chicken and rice, not a problem with them. No extra flavors, no interesting things added to it, so they enjoyed it too. So if you enjoyed watching me make this, please give me a thumbs up, and if you want to, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and come back and watch me make something else next week.